curtain and give you an in-depth and honest conversation between two people who are normalizing the daily experience of living with diabetes and transforming the support systems around them, tech and otherwise, in order to revolutionize chronic disease management.
I'm Amy Tenderich. I am the founder of a site called DiabetesMine, which I started after being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes myself back in 2003. I've become a well-known advocate, patient advocate. I run a series of events around digital technology and innovation in diabetes care. And I'm happy to be here today with Jeff Dachis of OneDrop.
Thanks, Amy. I'm really proud to be here with you. I'm Jeff Duchess. I'm the founder and CEO of OneDrop. We're a chronic condition management platform. I too was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes a little over 7 years ago and founded OneDrop with the idea that there had to be a better way to bring data-driven, personalized insights to people managing chronic conditions. And that's really what OneDrop is today. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to spend time with you, Amy.
Thank you. Me too. I'd love to speak with folks who get technology and also get what it means to live with a chronic condition. A very important combination. So we're here today to talk about patient-approved technology that resonates. And there is unfortunately too little of that.
Yeah.
And, we talked about starting out with kind of defining the problem. So patient experiences that exist today, as you said yourself, Jeff, are not really designed for the real world needs of people. So let's talk about that a little bit. What's wrong with patient experiences today? Well,
I'm going to get into this age-old debate right away, right off the bat. Let's just start it off with the word patient, right? I mean, it really sets up an interesting dichotomy that there's this system that's treating the patient versus what the user, the individual, does the 8,759 hours a year that they're not at the doctor's office. I mean, nowhere in my life have I ever referred to myself as a patient. Nowhere in my life have I ever woken up one day and said, I want to manage my chronic condition. And so this idea of patient centricity or patient approved technology or, is really seemingly from the view of somebody who's not a patient or who's not a person with, a chronic condition. And so let's get rid of that word in some ways. And words matter. They do matter. Let's talk about people who are trying to get stuff done each day. I'm trying to get my kids off to school this morning and get the Zoom call set up. I'm trying to get to work. I'm trying to figure out how to put food on the table. I'm trying to do my daily life. And I'm not life as a patient. I'm trying to live life as a person. And so really what we need to be talking about is person-centered technology that helps us with our health and wellness, right?
Right. I think that gets to the heart of a lot of diabetes tools that kind of seem like they're making the assumption that people are really interested in their glucose numbers or really want to spend time, doing stuff around their diabetes, when in fact, all they want to do is make sure their glucose numbers stay in range so that they can feel well and they can have a good day and they can not have to worry about having a low right. So, we talked about like the fact that, the aim is wrong in a way. A lot of these tools that are out there are just kind of help you accomplish some sort of niche task that's very medical that really doesn't fit into people's lives. And that is kind of the awakening I think that's happening now because, obviously patients started out with the people who were laid up in a hospital. As the years have gone by, we have all these people who are surviving and thriving with medical conditions. And you want to take those tools out of the hospital and give them to people out in the real world, but they were still just too clinical and not designed for life, and that's something I've been a big proponent of. We talk about Apple technology and how they've managed to, integrate all of these amazing, capabilities into a super easy to use single tool. That's where we need to go, right?
Yeah. I mean, what I'm really interested in, and I know you are too, and we've had all of these conversations over the years, you and I, hammering home on this sort of same topic, but we want something that's going to be useful to us, right? And it's not useful to the doctor. It's not useful to the hospital. It's not useful to the clinic. We want something that's going to be useful to us each and every day while we're making choices, cheeseburger, no cheeseburger, how are we going to approach a specific thing that we're trying to do? I'm going to go for a hike, and should I need to worry about it, or should I just, not worry about it? And so I'm really interested in the kind of technology that's integrating into our lives to help us make choices so that we don't have to, be thinking about our chronic conditions. Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, if I could throw an example in there as a person with diabetes, there were a lot of early tools that just, beep or alert or send reminders or show you a bunch of graphs of your glucose data. Again, that's not what I really want to accomplish. Now we're starting to see apps that do things like help you learn from your past experiences. Like, oh, I ate that burrito, the last 3 days for my work lunch, and I saw what happened to my glucose after eating that burrito. And now I've sort of learned how to sort of master that burrito and still have good glucose numbers. That's useful to me. So I think that, that really kind of illustrates what kind of tools people want. One of the things that we talked about earlier, and this is, again, your words, I love this. You talked about needing to solve the paradox of asking patients to be responsible for their own care, but at the same time, the system puts up all these burdens and obstacles. So, talk about that a little, and how can we get over that?
Well, I mean, you nailed it in so many ways. I mean, it's this strange paradox that we get only 6 or 7 minutes with a doctor, a couple times a year, or a nurse maybe, and they don't really have time to engage us, one. And then two, they're expecting us to manage our condition all the rest of the time that we're not in the doctor's office, which is awesome. I think people need to, to become empowered, to become, advocates for themselves, to have agency over their own bodies. That is absolutely the case. But then when the healthcare system throws up all of these hurdles, all these burdens, by keeping the data and information in silos, by making it difficult for us to bring those pieces of the puzzle together to derive insights that I can make decisions with, well, then you're basically causing more problems, and the burden of managing the condition isn't so much in me figuring out how to manage it. It's in overcoming the hurdles that the healthcare industry is throwing up in my way. And so, as an example, you and I both know, taking insulin. We use a deadly blunt instrument called Bolus insulin, and the method for taking bolus insulin is supposed to be that you're supposed to take it a half hour maybe before you eat, the preprandial bolus before you eat your food. But you're supposed to dose that amount of insulin based on how many carbohydrates you're about to eat. But most people don't ever know that how many carbohydrates they're gonna eat in 30 minutes. And then guess properly the amount of insulin that they're supposed to take for the maybe amount of carbohydrates that I'm supposed to eat in 30 minutes. And that basic construct that a doctor expects a person, as again with type 1 diabetes as one example, to figure out and do is a huge burden, a huge hurdle, and almost impossible for people to do. And so, you don't develop a system that is so non-user friendly and non-intuitive and non-capable of being successful with, and then expect people to manage that condition and be successful with it. And so that's just one example, and there are thousands of examples like that, where the silo-based healthcare system is putting up hurdles and burden on people with chronic conditions, and there just has to be a better way.
People build technology tools on top of that and say, oh, not only do you have to count carbs and take this insulin, but you need to record it all. And here's a log, or here's an electronic log, and here you need to go in there and plug in every meal you're going to eat. And you and I both know it's already hard enough to have to stop before you eat anything, as most people without diabetes never have to do, and take this medicine, try to figure it out, and then you're going to log it and you're going to do all of these additional tasks. That's just sort of piling on the burden, so I think if you're going to create a tool for people with diabetes, you kind of have to deconstruct all of that and say, how can we help from the ground, the ground up, instead of just putting more tasks on top of what people are already struggling to do.
That's exactly right. And what's coming out of some of these companies, the larger companies in the healthcare industry, is yet another micro widget that helps you do the thing that helps you do the thing that you have struggled doing the thing. And I mean, the last thing we need is that. What we need is something that helps us really understand what to do in the moment, cheeseburger, no cheeseburger, and make the call on the ground right there in a simple and easy to understand way. And so what that really gets to, I think, Amy, isn't really a patient-centric view of the world, because that's the disempowerment that that's baked into the system. But really what we're talking about is a focus on a user experience that's meaningful and useful to me, right? That's what I want. I want a healthcare experience that's meaningful to me, personalized for me, and useful to me. And, that's it. I'm not interested in a whole lot more.
Right. And we just need to think of the technology as an enabler and not, sort of worship the technology for its own sake. Which, we talked about that. I mean, the people who, especially early on, were creating a lot of these apps and portals that we saw at the early Health 2.0 conferences, for example, were just heavily technology driven. And there's just was a huge gap between, the people who were excited about this tool and the people who they thought were going to use it, right? People who are experiencing chronic pain, people who are struggling with their blood sugar, people who are, having all kinds of health issues that are already difficult. And then we're asking them to sort of, use this super complicated thing or this thing that's just time consuming. Everything needs to be about, as you said, a seamless and a pleasant experience and a motivating experience. And to me, that's why so many companies that can afford it, invest in working with design companies like IDEO and Frog Design, because they start from the experience. They say, well, let's follow people around who have, cystic fibrosis or diabetes or any other condition and see what their lives are like.
I believe that data-driven solutions are going to solve the problems for chronic care, and I can talk about that later. But so for me, I'm a big proponent of technology. But as you mentioned, it's not technology for technology's sake. It's not because I'm a wonky engineer and I love to see my engineering product come to life. It has a lot to do with that user experience. I'll touch upon the point that you mentioned about IDEO and Frog. I would venture to say that those companies get brought in to create an experience for healthcare companies, which is very exciting, and I'm happy to see that happen. And I bet you the designers at those companies are really frustrated by working in healthcare, because in the end, the solutions that they develop end up being sort of part way. Maybe the design of the surface of the plastic material is a little more rounded and a little more user touch friendly, but in the end, the software that's going on it that the pharma company developed is borderline useless, and so you end up with these frustrating solutions in the marketplace. And I know you've experienced them. I know I experienced them. I can pick one up right now. I'm not going to pick up a manufacturer, but I have one right in front of me. And where you ask yourself, what the heck were they thinking when they did that? I mean, it looks pretty. Maybe it has a soft touch to it, and then the software application that goes with the hardware is basically useless, And so I know that those tensions exist, in the healthcare marketplace today. But I applaud all the design effort. I would like to see a less frustrating experience in healthcare.
Yeah, I definitely agree that technology has huge potential. I think it's really just how we wield it, right? And, we talked about what's wrong with a lot of the apps, or at least I can speak from the diabetes perspective, is that they are so niche. There's an individual tool for, this little thing and that little thing. Things just need to be more integrated. I already have multiple logins for various, websites. I've got portals for my different providers who aren't in the same clinic. And then I've got, 5 or 6 or 8 different apps that I'm supposed to log into separately in order to accomplish little things. And, really where it's got to go, this all needs to be brought into a seamless experience where, there's a single portal or a single login, or as you mentioned, sort of the iPhone for diabetes or for, healthcare, basically. This is my chance to ask you about how OneDrop is treating multiple conditions and also offering coaching through a technology platform?
Well, thank you. You know, I mean, we struggle every day, you know, existentially, we struggle every day just to try to meet the needs of our users. And so I'm not going to say we get it perfect, you know, by any means, but really all the things that you mentioned are at the core of the OneDrop experience, and trying to integrate, you know, passive monitoring to make it, you know, easy so that you don't have to really think about entering anything in, to make that data actionable to people through predictions and insights, to give people turn-by-turn navigation for their health, to marry that with live one-on-one empathy-based coaching that helps people change their behaviors. We're bringing an army of empathy to bear on chronic conditions, and then taking that engine and pointing it not only at diabetes, prediabetes, hypertension, weight loss, and high cholesterol, but now in partnership with Bayer, bringing that to cardiovascular conditions, renal conditions, oncology, women's health issues, and a variety of others. And just to say, you know, we're giving it a best shot. We're trying to create user experiences that are really meaningful, that are data driven, and that give people actionable insights so they can have turn-by-turn navigation for their health. But it's a step function. I mean, you know, you have to start somewhere, build on that, build on that, and build on that. And so, you know, I'm really inspired by a lot of the companies that are participating in G4A, because these companies really are at the beginning of, you know, this transformational journey that we're all participating in. And I couldn't be more, you know, excited and again inspired by the work some of these companies are doing. I've been to a couple of the signing events over the years and seen some of the companies come through, and boy, it sure is exciting.
Well, thank you. I agree with you there for sure. If I may, I want to dig a little bit deeper on OneDrop's offerings, because I only know it from the diabetes perspective. And I've been saying for years that I think that's such a perfect marriage of data tracking tool with all of these capabilities, also gives you an ability to tap into some community knowledge, and then also connecting people with a real live coach to actually, you know, a diabetes expert in-app. So how does that work if someone's using with OneDrop for multiple conditions? Would they have separate coaches through the system, or how is it integrated?
You end up getting a single coach specific to the program that you're in. There's only one program. It's just personalized for you. So if you have hypertension and high cholesterol and prediabetes, the curriculum that we will be presenting with you, the coaching that you'll be getting and engaging with, and the type of devices integrated, data-driven insights provided, and turn-by-turn navigation for your health are all personalized for you. And so you are going to get a single program with a single coach that has all of those components integrated in that for you. Susie is going to get a different configuration of those things, specifically personalized for her. And so each component of the OneDrop experience is a multi-configured, integrated, single program, personalized just for you. And so
is it all phone-based, or do people have the option to do other ways? Yeah,
that's a great question. It depends on where you're getting your OneDrop. So the consumer version of OneDrop is all app chat based. The employer version and payer versions of OneDrop start as app based and then can upscale into more personalized experiences like video chat or phone calls.
And do people get to customize like how frequently they have touch points?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Again, it's a personalized experience for you. What we've learned is that you cannot take a blanket approach and throw it at a population and expect it to work for everybody or really anybody. You can't have a generalized approach to things. You need personalized care, and you need it to be relevant to you. And so, and the second part of that is that, it has to be something that intrinsically motivates you, the person, to do the self-management, to do the work that you have to do. Extrinsic motivation, hearing from your doctor that you need to eat right and exercise every 6 months is a useless set of advice. But when you're working with your coach to find eating habits and working out habits, or stress reduction habits, or sleep habits that work for you, and then you build on that, now all of a sudden you're building your own strength. You're not reacting to somebody's expectation of what they expect you to do. And so we found that intrinsic motivation and personalized care are the routes to solving problems. We use a lot of data and a lot of data science to do it. We use the army of empathy in our coaching platform to know that a person with a chronic condition is speaking to somebody who gets where they're coming from, who understands their problems, and is going to work with them to overcome their issues on a personalized basis.
So, and tell us, to what degree or how are physicians and other healthcare providers involved? And I'm asking because a lot of the early tools, or still many tools for diabetes, brag on the idea that you can have all this glucose data and you can stream it to your doctor, or that there'll be someone sort of on the other end ready to call you up if you have a high glucose number. And we found that to be not, it's not reimbursable. It's also doesn't really help either the doctor or the patient. But I'm asking, on this integrated solution that you're offering from OneDrop, is the person's endocrinologist or other doctor able to participate?
That's a great question, and I think it brings up an interesting way to think about things. One, of course, from within the OneDrop experience, the end user can share all of that data and information with their caregiver, with their coach, with their provider, with their doctor, with their spouse or children or anybody. It's all shareable. But that really isn't what this is about. It isn't really about getting your doctor to engage again extrinsically to help you 6 minutes every 6 months. It's really about getting you to intrinsically engage in your own well-being. And so our platform is really geared not as an adjunct to the healthcare system, but really exists as a fundamental and core self-care system that allows people to manage their chronic conditions the 8,759 hours a year that they're not a patient.
And I assume nutrition is a big component of that?
Yeah, nutrition is a huge component of it. Exercise is a massive component of it. Stress, sleep, all the different aspects that touch a person's day in and day out health choices are really core to the OneDrop platform. And Amy, I've been talking a lot here and you've been asking a lot of questions. Tell me, you're such a, you are a champion for the We Are Not Waiting movement. You are a champion for people with diabetes. You are a tireless advocate in the space for people that are suffering with these issues, and firsthand as a single army of empathy right there, how we all struggle with this. What do you think is necessary in the treatment of chronic conditions, and specifically in diabetes today? How do you feel about the technology that you have? What gear are you rocking right now? And okay. What's working and what's not working?
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you so much for the kind words, and thank you for the question. I think that I was asking about nutrition and exercise because, again, to me, it keeps coming back to the fact that normally, there are just so many different apps and tools, and, my phone is cluttered with them. I download stuff like most people, and I use it for a little while, and then I just get burnt out or get distracted or just decide, like, this is just too much. I'm going to clear all of this off, separate apps for nutrition, separate apps for exercise. There are sleep tools, there are this, there are that, on top of the burden of just dealing with this illness to begin with, not to mention all the time and energy spent just getting the right insurance coverage and, getting your supplies and trying to be able to afford things. So it's all a lot. It's, it's an avalanche of stuff that you have to deal with. And I always say, like, I know that I'm privileged. I have the financial resources and I'm educated, and, and if I'm struggling, there are obviously many, many people out there who don't even have those advantages. So, it's all about simplification, and I think all about sort of getting to the core of what helps people in their day-to-day. That's why I brought up this thing about when these apps started to come out that help people figure out meals. Like, you realize as a person with diabetes, like, everyone, we're creatures of habit. So we have certain favorite items. Like for breakfast, there's probably only 4 or 5 or maybe 5 different things that I ever eat for breakfast. So if someone could help me kind of figure out, like really dial in on those meals and know, how they're going to affect my blood sugar and what I should be doing, then, that's a huge help for me. You've just like changed my life there with a very simple thing. So, those are the really practical things like that, I think are super helpful. The idea of some kind of a platform or an app that integrates all of these things so that you're not having to deal with so many different logins and separate tracking apps. It's just enough to boggle the mind sometimes. So I don't, I was at a conference, a diabetes conference not long ago for patients, and they were asking us about our care regimes and, what is your philosophy about diabetes? And I said, my philosophy is to do the absolute bare minimum that I could deal with and, and still get decent outcomes. Because I don't want to spend a lot of time on diabetes, right? Even though I do as an advocate, but the whole point is like to push that a little bit out of your life so that it's not this constant burden. So that's why I love what you guys are doing. I think that, integration is the way to go. I think that combination of a really powerful data platform that does track your numbers, but also helps you make sense of them, identifies trends and whatnot, allows you to share that information as needed in the right way with your providers. And then also offers, tools that help you with those things that are so core to your care, which is nutrition, exercise, sleep, and other things. And also just tracking other conditions you may have and other meds, because that tends to end up being this completely separate part of your life that you have to deal with, right?
And oftentimes,
so that's what I'm wearing. I'll tell you really quickly. I'm wearing a continuous glucose monitor, of course.
Which one?
The Dexcom. I'm wearing it for years. Love it. Wearing the Omnipod.
D6, D5? Wait.
D6, of course, the most recent one. And I'm wearing the Omnipod tubeless insulin pump, which I was one of their first users ever, I think, certainly on the West Coast when it wasn't even out, because I absolutely, again, talk about technology that's like approved by patients and resonates. I wanted to go on an insulin pump, but I just could not warm up to the idea of having tubing hanging off me. And at the time when I made that choice, I had small children who were like jumping on me and pulling. And I thought, oh my God, this thing is going to rip out all the time. Like it just frightened me. So the Omnipod, I also love because it uses kind of natural language instead of, at the time, the insulin pumps were more like pagers or kind of like which did not appeal to me at all. So I've been really happy. But most recently, through the DIY community, there's sort of an option to do something called looping, which connects your continuous glucose monitor with your insulin pump to create this sort of semi-automated system that basically the readings from the glucose monitor inform what the pump does. And it has been a life changer for me. I feel like I was still doing pretty well on, the 2 separate devices, but I talk about integration. I now have a screen on my phone that shows me, insulin on board. It gives me the whole, all of the information in one place. And especially when overnight, when you're not doing activity or eating, you're not doing things that would affect your glucose, in a very strong way. This system actually keeps me in range like 85% more than I was at night previously. And as you know, nighttime is a challenge for people with diabetes because you can get severe low blood sugar, or you can just get highs that wake you up all night so you don't get any sleep. So just by combining these 2 products and giving me this like interface where I can control it, I've improved my quality of life hugely.
Amazing. And not everybody knows this, but by design, those 2 devices don't talk to each other, right? I mean, the companies have specifically made it so that largely they can't talk to each other. The Dexcom CGM that you're wearing specifically is designed not to talk to the Omnipod that you're also wearing. Two medical devices, yes?
Well, I wouldn't say that their intention was to never integrate. It's just that these, like everything else, they were just sort of organically created as individual standalone products that do one thing. And thankfully, our patient community a number of years ago, and it got really vocal after I hosted that first D-Data event in 2013. People stood up and said, first of all, these devices should talk to each other, and we can do this. there's enough people out here who are technology savvy who can reverse engineer the protocols on these devices and make this happen. So, hey, industry, you need to get on board and help us with this. And as you know, Jeff, a lot has happened in the last years, and there are now commercial systems coming out that are starting to connect these devices. But it's frustrating that it had to kind of happen in that way, that these devices come out as these, again, standalone things that only do one thing, and they don't share data, and they're not integratable. And then we all have to go back and kind of fight for that right to get the full program, right?
The full picture, right? And so, like you mentioned earlier, this sort of stair-step function that, or like we talked about earlier, this stair-step function that's happening where, first you have the silo pieces that don't talk to each other. And then, users are basically saying, why the hell would you make a product that didn't interact with the other product where I really need the info? So Amy, there's so much going on in the industry right now, and there's so many new companies that are starting in digital health. What advice would you give some of these companies as they begin their efforts to try to enter into the industry?
Yeah, the advice I would give them would go back to what we talked about. You're building an experience, right? It's not just a tool. It's not just a way to move data around or, a platform. It's an experience. So think about it that way. And, just talk to your users, talk to them, and keep iterating, keep, improving. There should be, because it's an experience, it needs to be motivational. It needs to do what some of these design companies talk about, sparking joy, right? Yep. Even though it may be something that has to do with cancer or diabetes, it doesn't sound like a lot of fun, and it isn't, believe me. But if I have a tool, I want to feel good about using that tool. I want to feel some sense of accomplishment. I want to feel that, that this tool is easing my burden and accomplishing something positive for me. So, the other thing I would say is that a lot of the apps that are out there now, as I said, they accomplish one very small piece of the puzzle. So I would think it's all about like partnerships and integration. And, maybe this tool can be part of a bigger platform and not something that a user has to separately log into and download on their phone and whatnot. So think about who you can partner with. What kind of component are you in a bigger system? But when it goes back to, it definitely, again, goes back to checking with your users, understanding their experience. And, I know OneDrop is really big on that. So I wanted to ask you, how do you guys go about that? What are some best practices?
User experience is crucial to everything that we do. And again, we don't always get it right, but we certainly try. And it rests in, I'm going to say it again, an army of empathy that we're bringing to the problem set. We are our users. We understand their problems. And then beyond that, we spend extensive amounts of energy doing user research, experiencing the journey, finding the pain points, and finding ways, to reduce those pain points. I'd also add on to your point about, creating a point solution in the market may work for a short period of time, but it ends up being really a feature of a bigger system. And so, if you're going to play in this world, there are so many forces in healthcare that are going to work to grind you out and basically make it hard for you, not on purpose, but just the way that the system is designed. And so you've got to be playing chess, not checkers. You've got to be thinking not just the move ahead, but the next 20 moves ahead to win the game. And then you've got to have a plan and the funding and the team and the execution to get there. And, that's not an easy road to go. So, make sure that you're up for the game, because it's not an easy one. And there's so many pitfalls and chasms along the way that can create problems. And so, I would just say, play checkers, not chess, and think in a system mind, not a point solution mind.
Chess, not checkers, you mean?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Did I say that? Yeah, you're playing chess, not checkers.
Not checkers.
Sorry.
No, not at all. So Jeff, thank you so much. I always enjoy talking with you. This has been inspiring, and I hope that together we'll continue to try to change the healthcare world.
Thank you, Amy. I'm always appreciative of your tireless advocacy for people in the healthcare space. And it's just been such a pleasure to spend time with you again. Thank you.